Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Billy Napier, the Florida Gators rolling into 2025. We've not been shy about it. Very high on what this football team can be in 2025. And the frustrating part about it is go look at how the national media talks about this football team instead of focusing on a lot of reasons to believe in this football team in 2025. I feel like there's this hyper focus on the question marks that we have. And look, this ain't me getting up here and saying that we don't have question marks about Florida, because we do. But when you listen to people talk about this football team in the national media, it's the injuries that we've seen this team have in spring practice and fall camp, the brutal schedule that they have to go through the next couple of months. Billy Napier, is he a good head coach or not? Can he bring it all together? Look, those are all very fair questions. What if we take 20 minutes, just focus on the reasons to believe in this football team? The reasons that Florida might not just be good. They have the opportunity to be great in 2025. And not to spoil the episode, but it's a heck of a lot more reasons than just DJ Lagway is a really good quarterback. I go back and look at that football team, the version of Florida that we saw in the back half of November in 2024. That was one of the better teams that we saw in the country. I have reason to believe this is kind of what this episode is going to be about. Is I think we're just going to see a better version of that going into 2025. A glass half full episode for the Florida Gators coming up. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, the Florida fans, appreciate you guys. Been a blast talking this football team. The amount of support y'all have shown the boys has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And look, I got a note sheet full of stuff I want to talk about, but I'm going to give you the T-box here. Give me the 30-second, maybe I'll give you a minute, elevator pitch on Florida in 2025.
I think there's an element of Florida having built this program in a way that isn't as flashy as some. Like, I do feel like a lot of times we gravitate towards teams that, quote, win the transfer portal. Like Miami's been that team at times. I feel like LSU's probably that team this year. And we've certainly seen that where, you go out, get a bunch of talent. Now it's like, well, now that team's ready to rock. Like, you look, there's not a ton of red on this list. No. There's not a ton of red, frankly, on that offensive list either. Like Florida, what they've done now since Billy's taken over is stack really strong classes. And then the development pieces are the thing I think people are missing. Like, yes, I got some questions about what Billy Napier does in game and some of those like strategy things he kind of does, if you will.
I think Florida
what he's done in terms of getting guys better in this program, like year after year, like looking at the development of some of these players, Tyreek Sapp's one that really jumps off the page to me. Like, I mean, you see everybody kind of moving in the right direction. And I think that sets them up for a potentially really strong year as like it's kind of become his team, if you will.
Yeah, they've I think you said it best. They've built it, at least in my opinion, they've built it the right way. Now, building it the right way sometimes takes some time, especially in this era of college football where you can snap your fingers and get a brand new roster. Billy has chose to do it the right, at least in my opinion, the right way. The other thing that I'll say is, like, I'm sure there's some college football fans that are listening to this that maybe aren't Florida fans and getting up here and saying, what do you mean they're going to get better going into 2025 when they barely made any additions in the portal? You summed it up. Like, a lot of these guys that Florida was winning a lot of football games with late in the season, they were year 1, year 2 guys. Like, you don't think those guys are getting better going into year 2 and year 3 of their college football careers? The player development aspect of this, they've gotten it right. And I think a lot of these guys going into 2025, you have reason to believe they're going to be better football players because we've seen it. Like, I'm not just making a projection. Like, we've seen guys like Tyreek Sapp get better over the years. Thought Caleb Banks took a monster step 2024. Probably going to take another step in 2025. I want to start with this front seven. Look, could you make the argument that you lose a guy like Cam Jackson? You lose a guy like Jack Pyburn, maybe it gets worse. You could make that argument. There's also a lot of reasons to point to this front seven and says it gets better. I'll give you my elevator pitch real quick. Jack Pyburn, a guy that left Florida because I feel like he didn't think he was getting enough opportunity in that rotation. He left Florida. He went to LSU. Go read the fall camp buzz there. Jack Pyburn's their best defensive lineman going into 2025. That ain't a shot at LSU, or it's not meant to be. Not a shot at Jack Pyburn. But I'm saying Jack Pyburn left Florida because he felt like he wasn't on the field enough. Goes to LSU's their best defensive lineman. What does that tell you about the defensive lineman Florida has rolling into 2025?
And that's the thing. The star power. Like Tyreek Sapp, the way he was playing towards the end of the year, one of the best defensive linemen in the country. Ditto for Caleb Banks. Kind of similar story. My big thing, like I think you got to be looking at is what do you get from a guy like LJ McCray? What do you get from a guy like Jaden Woods? I do think those young, hyper-talented players are some of the more important guys because I think they that's how you build in like 2 full lines of guys who are just hammers. Because again, George, I know you want to. I'll give you time to talk about George Gumbs. I'm excited for George Gumbs too. But I look at some of those young guys and how good I think they can possibly be and how much buzz you've heard about around a guy like Jaden Woods. Those guys to me are like the true important pieces.
Yeah,
we don't have it elsewhere.
And you could tell I was getting ready to interrupt you, and I didn't. George Gumbs, he's another guy that I view as like taking a big step. Look, is Tyreek Sapp going to take a massive step in 2025? I don't know. If we get the same version, we got a Tyreek Sapp and Caleb Banks in the month of November, I'm just fine with that. George Gumbs got a lot better throughout the 2024 season. What if he takes a step in 2025? Then you inject Jaden Woods, who the buzz is too loud to ignore, right? Go look at that. That was the recipe for Florida winning their games down the stretch. Still against LSU, and mind you, that was an LSU team that pretty much that whole team that they had on the offensive line, they're playing on Sundays right now. They had 7 sacks, 11 TFLs against LSU. The next week against Ole Miss, they had 4 sacks, 9 TFLs. Then against Florida State, 8 sacks, 14 TFLs. They were dominating teams with the front 7. Now, here's another argument to why that front 7 gets better. Dill, what about the off-ball backers, man? Like Shamar James, you lose him. This is not a shot at Shamar James. He was good, probably wasn't great. You go look at the impact he had on the game. Made a lot of tackles, but only had 2 sacks and 4 TFLs. I'm looking at these backers going into year 3, going into year 2. Miles Graham-Childs, Pup Power, Jaden Robinson. I think we could see a monster step from the impact on the game that these linebackers have in 2025. And Dill, it's all coming together from a defensive coach and Coach Roberts, who I think is one of the best in the game at getting the most out of his backers.
And I can't wait to see what he gets out of Miles Graham and Childs. And Miles Graham, to me, the more I watch I was just watching a little bit of that Ole Miss game. Miles Graham is really, really good. And he was really good last year. So to me, he's kind of the guy I'm looking at. Man, what if they get an Anthony Hill Jr. type season out of Miles Graham? Because I do feel like that's in him to be one of those real, not just a tackling machine, but a productive machine or a production machine.
Still having a fingerprint on this football game, right? And to me, it's probably Childs. When you ask me, hey, who is the linebacker that maybe you can walk up off the edge and get some pass rush production from? I personally think it's Aaron Childs. I think he's physically that kind of guy. That's how talented he is. I don't care who it comes from. Dude, we could say the same thing about Pup Howard too. Pup Howard is exactly what you want an off-ball linebacker to look like if you were to build one in a laboratory. You started to see it come together before the injury. What if it fully comes together in year 3? And all these linebackers were really, really young. They're playing behind what we think is a very good defensive line. And you got 4 dudes that we think can have a monster impact. And I loved your comp to Anthony Hill. Can we get 1 or 2 of these linebackers to have that kind of impact? Where I look at Anthony Hill last year, 17 tackles for a loss, 10 sacks. I'm not saying we need that exact stat line. I don't think it's out of the question for some of these linebackers to take that kind of step and become that kind of football player for Florida in 2025. This front 7 has the opportunity to dominate a lot of football games. Here's the other thing I'll say, Dill. Go look at some of the teams on Florida's schedule. Go look at the SEC in general, man. I don't feel very good about a lot of these offensive lines. Florida's going to have the opportunity up front to wreck a lot of games. Let's go to the offense side of the football real quick. And we kind of have a similar conversation with Lenore Sellers, though. I feel like people talk about DJ and Lenore Sellers as if they're finished products. Buddy, they're nowhere near finished product. DJ Lagway was a true freshman last year, and he was significantly banged up. I mean, one, we got to get DJ Lagway healthy, and that's certainly a question. But what if he does get healthy? I think you could see DJ Lagway take a monster step in 2025. And I'll give you the T box here. Where do you think this kid can improve the most?
I mean, I think a part of it starts with the weapons he has around him. Because again, we always go back to it, and I feel like everyone just points to a lot of interceptions, low completion percentage, too
Yeah.
reliant on big plays. I mean, that emanated from the fact that the only two reliable weapons he had, with DK and Badger, were both not really guys who run routes underneath. Like they're boundary wide receivers, they're good working down the field. And you didn't really have that slot guy with Wilson going down early, and you didn't
Yeah,
have your
sure.
tight ends being like really dominant players for this. So I look at what they now have in the wide receiver room and how many more bodies they have, but also how many more skill sets. So you got like Vernell Brown now in there who can be really dynamic and get himself open, I think, consistently. You still have your vertical threats, DJ Wilson, Aiden Mizell, like guys who can get down the field. And then J. Michael Sturdivant might be one of the more underrated transfer portal pickups in all of college football. Because you talk about like a well-rounded possession wide receiver. Like you go back to some of the like when he's had good quarterback play around him, he's been a hyper productive player in college football.
J. Michael, I think is a. I would say this: J. Mike and Dallas Wilson as your big bodies that stretch the field. I think that's a pretty, at least what we're hearing from Fall Camp, pretty clear upgrade. And that's not a shot at DK. That's not a shot at Badger. Like they were dang good football players for Florida, hell of a lot better than I thought they were going to be. I think you're
Like you
significantly
look, Jay Michael's a more complete wide receiver than either of those guys in my mind. In terms like again, yes, he's a big body and get down the field, but he runs really clean routes. He can get himself open and be a really effective possession wide receiver too.
And a lot of, I think that's probably fair. But I want to focus in on what you were saying earlier. Because I hear everybody say, like, all right, we got to get DJ Lagway to take what's there a little bit more. And I think that's a fair criticism. I think Billy Napier and DJ Lagway would probably agree with you as well. My question would be, who are the pass catchers that were working the short and intermediate route trees? There was a significant drop off, like you said, from DK and Badger. There was a significant drop off when Eugene Wilson went out. Now you have Trey Wilson getting back. You got Vernell Brown coming in as a true freshman who I think excels those kind of route trees. You're going to have guys that are creating separation underneath. And I think that's going to help DJ Lagway be a little bit more of a, hey, we still going to make some big time throws because I'm the most talented quarterback in the sport. But at the same time, we're going to be a little bit more efficient. We're going to be taking what's there a little bit more, taking less negative plays. Here's the other thing, Dill. Run game should be better. It arguably should be a lot better. You know, it starts with this offensive line. I don't think I'm breaking any news. Like this offensive line going to be good. I know the Florida.
And that's another one. Like you could look at it and say, "Oh, who did they add? Why are they going to be better than what they were last year? Because they're running it back." Well, it's like again, you think about the steps they made from 23 to 24. Like again, it all goes back to like people underrating the fact that if you can keep your kind of system together and keep guys in your program and develop them at a high level, which again to me is what Billy Napier has done the best at his time in Florida.
Sure.
I love the idea of having my five guys back on the offensive line.
Go look at. Sorry, did it again. You say, go. I thought you were finished. Go look at the best offensive lines that we've seen in the sport over the last 5 years. And I'm doing a little off-roading here. I didn't write them down, but the ones that come to mind, Michigan in 2023, didn't have a lot of transfers, guys. They had a lot of guys that have been in the program for 4 to 5 years. Go look at some of the Georgia offensive lines. Go look at Texas last year. The best offensive lines are not pieced together using the portal. The best offensive lines are homegrown with a lot of continuity. That's what Florida has. You don't see a single red name up front. Jason Zanamella, maybe he was like a late. Devin Emanuel also. But regardless, those are the guys that are in the two deep. The offensive line should be a lot better. And you got Jaden Baugh going into year 2. And the returns we're getting from this kid are elite. And so there is a kind of a two-sided conversation here. Number one, the run game should be better. I mean, Florida last year only ran the football for 4.5 yards per carry. That was 51st in the country. It was good. It wasn't great. Should be great in 2025. Here's the other thing. When was DJ Lagway at his best? Work and play action. Hey, plot twist. The better you run the football, the more effective play action is going to be, the more opportunity you have to use play action. And so now giving him a little bit more of a run game to lean on, letting him lean on play action a little bit more, further enhances DJ Lagway. Look, DJ's going to get better as a quarterback because he has a year under his belt. He also has a lot more pieces around him as well. That's what fires me up most about Florida. And Dill, here's the last thing I'll say before we sign the sucker out. Starting hot, man. Florida's lost their last two openers the last 2 years. And like we've always gotten off on a bad footing with Florida since Billy Napier's been here. They have the opportunity to kind of tune up the first two games before they go on the road to LSU. That's big. Not losing your opener going to be important to this program too, because this is a team that, look, what I just need to see is I need the ball to start rolling. This team getting a little bit of a swagger, because if you get that, this team can bang with anybody in the country. I ain't getting up here and picking them to win a national championship more because I just got to see Billy Napier do it. They have all the pieces to do so, and you make no mistake about it. We'll pause it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I apologize. I had 2 interruptions there. Got to clean it up. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.